Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bengal Tiger podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Shea Dixon, both in Baton Rouge now, both having watched LSU beat Georgia State 56-14. Shea, how are you doing on this Sunday morning?
I'm doing well. It was a wild night in Tiger Stadium. It was not the most packed you'll ever see for a. This is what happens when you schedule a non-con game at the second to last game of the regular season, and you have another game coming up at home. So it wasn't as packed as the announced crowd they said of 101,000 or whatever it was. But boy, who the people who went got to witness history. Jaden Daniels, 8 touchdowns, 6 passing touchdowns, 5 incompletions, put on an absolute clinic. Matty B, I could sit here and just read, and I will probably a number of these, but just like read off all the stats that he now leads the nation in. And I'll give you a few here to kind of get the conversation flowing and your thoughts because you've watched him from start to finish. You were at every practice in the spring, you were at every practice in the fall, and you've talked a ton about the same thing that Brian Kelly has talked about is the confidence Jaden has now, buying into himself and realizing, hey, this was a guy that in high school, Matty B, was a 3,000 yard passer, 1,000 yard rusher twice. It was when you did film breakdowns at Arizona State, it was, hey, he's got this in him. A year ago, it was just a lot of I don't want to lose this job, so I'm going to not turn the ball over and I'm going to play it safe. And not only has he turned now to the deep ball, Matty B, but he has not turned it over at that same clip. He rarely ever throws a pick. Here's some rankings that he ranks number one in right now in the country. Pass or total yards, 4,591. Nobody else is even at 4,000 yards yet. Passing touchdowns, 36, number one. These are all going to be number one in the NCAA. Total touchdowns, 46, 417 yards per game, 10.75 yards per pass play, 208.3 passer rating, and that, if he finished with it, would be the best in the history of college football regular season. Right now, it's set at 207. And then last night goes over the 1,000-yard mark, 1,014 rushing yards, also most by a quarterback. I could go on, but after reading all of that to you, Matty B, we wake up today and multiple sports books have Jayden Daniels as the new Heisman front runner. Just a couple of weeks ago, he was catching plus 2,000 odds. Now he is either plus 110 or minus 110 in some places, but now is ahead of Bo Nix, who had another very good game yesterday. Oregon cruised to a win against Arizona State, but a race that once seemed Penix versus Nix has turned into Daniels versus Nix.
And the incredible part of this push from Jaden Daniels is the fact that none of the teams in front of him, like none of the top 6 teams, have lost. Right? Bo Nix hasn't suffered a bad loss. Penix hasn't lost yet. Marvin Harrison is still, playing, even though he's not putting up the numbers. I think people are trying to push for him. McCarthy hasn't lost yet, so Jaden Daniels has not needed the other guys in front of him to lose games or really, I guess, fall off in a sense. I mean, McCarthy and Harrison have had their struggles a bit, but Penix and Nix, for the most part, since being in discussion, have played fairly well. Washington struggled, but won. Oregon has won pretty comfortably. They've looked like a playoff team. It's really just Jayden Daniels' excellence that has allowed him to obviously the odds to pick up, and everybody's staying with them. I do think also there was a going into this last week where Oregon plays Oregon State and LSU plays Texas A&M. Both have losable games. They should win, obviously, but it's going to come down to really this last week of who puts the team on their back to win these big games. Obviously, for Oregon, they're trying to get in a playoff game. And for LSU, you're trying to get to 9 wins. I do think this last week is actually, that's why it's kind of even between Nix and Daniels right now. This is what it comes down to.
It's going to be fun too because Daniels plays at 11 a.m. So it's like the chance for him to go out and make his mark the whole day. Everyone's going to talk about it if he performs well, obviously. And then Nix plays at 15 or 30 at night in one of the marquee games of the week, that Oregon State Oregon game. Boy, that'll make next Saturday a lot of fun. I know some people wonder, Matty B, about conference championship games, LSU not being in one. How does that hurt him? Daniels, I don't think it will in a major way unless Nix goes out these next 2 weekends and just like puts up ungodly numbers and sort of retakes that main stage of the discussion. That being said, I know across history, I've mentioned this before, a lot of people, ballots are due on Sunday after conference championship weekend. A lot of people send theirs in before then. So they do judge it off just, hey, here's the 12 games of the regular season that everybody got to play.
Yeah.
And certainly LSU with 3 losses, Matty B, none of them are Jayden Daniels' fault. I mean, they combined for 101 points in those 3 losses. They had 49 points and 600 something yards up at Ole Miss. That's the one that certainly stings the most. And all of them are good. Like Florida State, Ole Miss, Bama, these are top 10 teams. And LSU's offense just kept humming. It is the best offense in the country, outpacing Oregon at the moment. But the Bo Nix Daniels show is on. I think 2 things I circle, Matty B, that I would say separate it: the total yards, what Daniels is doing with his legs. And Bo Nix is a dual threat quarterback. He's nowhere close to what Daniels is doing with his legs. And then passing wise, the average depth of target. Nix, a lot of what he at least has done, but you can certainly point to this past weekend's game. Dump offs to the running backs, screens, short wide receiver throws. Daniels has come out and chunked it downfield time and time and time again. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they're not going to be close. The average depth of target between Nix and Daniels will not be close. And I think when you throw that into the mix, it shows truly how special he is as a dual threat quarterback right now. And he is the best player in college football. Brian Kelly was asked after the game last night, 56-14 win over Georgia State, when he had 8 touchdowns, is he the best player you've ever coached? And he said, I've been coaching 30 plus years. I've never seen anybody do in a season what he's doing. So yes, by definition, this would be the best player in a season I've ever coached. It's historic stuff we're watching.
For context, and I mentioned this, I don't remember when I mentioned this, but it is very much Bo Nix. You know, he's been great this year. Like I don't want to take anything away from him.
He's been awesome.
He is not on Jayden Daniels levels to me as a passer and what he's done. And that's, again, without even accounting for his legs. I think Jayden Daniels, you mentioned the average depth of target. I think it is very much a product of them. I think Oregon has perhaps the best offensive line in the country. I think they've, like you said, thrown a lot of screens, short stuff. They do not force the ball down the field at all. This is from October 19th, so this has certainly changed, I'm sure, a little bit, but Bo Nix average depth of target was 6.3 yards, which I believe was one of the lowest in the country. I believe Michael Penix around that time, I'm reading a Washington story, was around 9. Jayden Daniels, I'm sure, is in the double digits in terms of yards, average depth of target. I don't have the exact stats up, but like that's Bo Nix stat is in the same area of like Graham Mertz, Noah Fafita from Arizona. So I just don't think he's even been on the level of Jayden Daniels as a passer. And then you add in the legs, and it's just a whole different argument. And I know you mentioned earlier, but the average the average yards per attempt for Jayden Daniels, I don't remember what number you said, but ESPN has it at 11.8, a full yard ahead of second place Jalen Milroe and a full 2 yards ahead of Bo Nix. So he's incredible. I thought LSU, to talk about the game a little bit, I thought LSU actually played it perfectly for Jayden Daniels. Like, I don't think it was stat padded. Well, first of all, the defense couldn't get a stop in the first quarter, or the first half. So it didn't feel stat padded at all in the first half. But in the second half, for a team that's end goal is no longer win a playoff game and win the SEC championship, the end goal now is to have as much success as a team as possible. And whether you like it or not, individual success is team success. Jayden Daniels' success is this team success. A Biletnikoff Award for Malik Neighbors would be team success for this team. And so that, I think, is very tangible, and I think something that needs to be recognized is, maybe you could have taken him out one possession earlier, so he only has 5 touchdowns and 360 yards instead of all these numbers. But it changes nothing to me that they let him play one more series and against Georgia State to really put, I mean, put the case away. I think this was a
Everybody's
fantastic
playing
night.
bad teams. He also sat the whole half against Grambling at the beginning of the
Yeah,
year. I mean,
and yeah, I don't
yes,
have a
they
problem.
kept him in there late for that extra drive. He got a little bit of extra love, but go dig through anyone's tape of any Heisman winner season and they play cupcakes, and you're going to, it's just what it is. Everybody plays 3 games of non-conference schedule, and one of LSU's is Florida State.
Yes, and LSU's strength of schedule for the season is much more challenging than
Not close.
any other teams. It's not close. And Oregon played Arizona State, which might as well be a G5 program for this week's. Like it very much was earned. Jaden Daniels was accurate, even on the 2 of his 5 incompletions. What, Aaron Anderson overthrown by a yard, I guess, but Malik Neighbors probably makes that play. And Chris Hilton on that little out route where he was like trying to use his body, should have used his hands. Like that was a good throw. He just didn't catch it. Yeah, we can nitpick all we want. At the end of the day, Jaden Daniels has been the best player in college football, the best rushing quarterback I've seen at least since Lamar Jackson. The best he's the best passing quarterback in the country this year, which includes a class that has Drake May and Caleb Williams and Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Like he has been incredibly accurate on time. I thought his arm strength this year has been incredible. That's something we didn't really talk about, but against Georgia State, there were a couple throws that he zipped in there. I think the touchdown to Malik or the one where, I'm sorry, Kyron Lacey, where Kyron got down to like the 3-yard line or something around there. I mean, the arm strength is no longer a concern, I think, for the next level for Jaden Daniels as well.
On points responsible for, Jaden Daniels is number 1 in the country, 278. Bo Nix in the top 5 at 244. So you're talking about more than 30 points on the year already, pacing ahead. Every stat is there for you. I don't know at this point, Matty B, what holds him back if it's from winning a Heisman, if it's not that they lost 3 games and that Oregon only lost 1. Like, is that it? Because no other stat is close. Bo Nix is not ahead of him in anything.
This is the only way Nix wins it. Well, there's I guess 2 ways, but obviously if LSU loses to A&M, I just it can be unfair. Yes, Jaden Daniels could put up 500 yards of offense if they lose to A&M and Oregon beats Oregon State and Oregon probably gets into the playoff or wins the Pac-12. Like I think that's going to be too much for voters to overcome. You can disagree with it. That's kind of just going to be what it is. But Nix does have an advantage playing tomorrow or playing next week at night and being primetime type game. If he has a quote unquote Heisman type moment and a close win, let's say against Oregon State, where he puts up big numbers and Jaden Daniels just kind of takes care of business against A&M, I would be concerned a little bit with that. And then I like we talked about, I don't know how voters weigh in the Pac-12 championship game that could play in Jaden Daniels' favor, could play in Bo Nix's favor, because maybe somebody puts in a vote for Bo Nix and they lose the Pac-12 championship game, or maybe vice versa. So there's just so many factors going on with it. I think the odds are pretty spot on right now. I would have those 2 as pretty even because I don't know how next week is going to go exactly.
Let's get a quick ad read here, and then we'll wrap up with some other things. We just wanted to do a lot of Jaden Daniels Heisman reaction because this is the first time all year, Matty B, that he is been a Heisman frontrunner. He has been creeping up the board slowly. Everybody's saying, hey, you should get more love. He goes out and puts up a performance like that, over 500 yards and 8 touchdowns. You wake up today and he's now in the lead for the first time with the sports books. But a shout out every Sunday or Saturday night, whenever we do it, to Andy Ludicky, My Perfect Franchise. You guys know it if you listen to the pod each week. My Perfect Franchise and Andy are the spot to go if you are looking to get involved as a franchisee or just want to know more about franchises. He says it every time. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream? This is something where you can be a side hustle for you. He wants you to give him a call because it can be something small going in with friends. It could be jumping into, a business that you've always had some passion about, but have not dove into across your career. Or it could just be diversifying kind of your portfolio and what you're doing with different streams of income. And Andy says it all the time. It doesn't matter how much money you have, to call him is free. And to get into the franchise business and become a franchisee, there are so many levels to it. that you don't need a ton of money to do it. We've had a number of Bengal Tiger subscribers reach out to him, said that he's been great to talk to. You can call him. Andy is at 404 973 9901. That's 404 973 9901. Or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. His services are 100% free. So you give him a call. He will run you down through every answer you may, or answer to every question you might have. He can give you kind of the sticking points of what he's done over his multiple decades owning multiple different franchises and what's worked and what hasn't. And it costs you nothing to give him a call or email him. So Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, or give him a call at 404 973 9901. Matty B wrapping up. They did play Georgia State. It was a non-con game. They were expected to cruise. They did. They covered. It was 56-14. LSU's offense had 8 drives. They scored on all 8 of them. They came out for a 9th drive with Garrett Nussmeier, and they kneeled the game out. On defense, I will say that Georgia State came out in the first quarter, and it was a 14-14 ball game. At one point, it was 7-0 Georgia State. They marched right down the field and scored on them. After 12 minutes left in the second quarter, when Georgia State made it 14-14, they did not score another point the rest of the way. They finished with 217 yards passing, 148 yards rushing, 17 first downs. They went 5 of 12 on third down, 64 plays, average almost 6 yards a play. But one thing we did see last night, Matty B, was LSU's defense just bent, but didn't break. And they kept trying to go for it on fourth down. It didn't work. They got some big stops, big turnovers on downs to give it back to the offense. And kudos to that side for, in a game like that where you're blowing them out, they stayed buckled in and they didn't allow anything beyond that 14 points. And Matty B, you put it in your best bets of the week. I think what was it? 19.5 was Vegas's over under on Georgia State.
20.5. I got it at 20.5.
LSU holds them well under 20.5. So compared to what Vegas expected, LSU's defense played better than we thought.
Yeah. I'll just say, after the second touchdown by Georgia State, I was ready to write off that final lines bet. I was ready in the thread, being like, sorry guys, I was in Charleston. I didn't have a good read on this one. And then LSU didn't allow a point the rest of the game. So obviously, yes, Georgia State ends the game 1 of 4 on fourth downs. I believe one of those was that shot down the sideline where the receiver got open, got some separation. I believe it was from Javian Toviano, and I guess lost the ball in the lights or didn't see it. Whatever it was, just the ball bounced, almost hit him, and he didn't catch it in the end zone. Obviously, that would have been a touchdown. They got the ball into, I guess, scoring territory or LSU territory a few times, weren't able to convert on those fourth downs. I wrote it in my post-game, rapid reactions. This defense right now, it is what it is. And I do think they deserve credit for not allowing point after the first 2 touchdowns. But ultimately allowing a Georgia State offense, Darren Granger, to go 23 of 29 passing for 179 yards, 1 touchdown. And their running back Marcus Carroll to average almost 6 yards per carry. Yes, a lot of that was done on those scoring drives, but still, the LSU defense kind of just is what it is at this point. We're game 11 in the season. The shortcomings are obvious. The flaws are obvious. The personnel deficiencies maybe even are obvious, and the coaching deficiencies are obvious. So there's not a lot to expand upon here. It was very much an LSU defense game where they gave up yards. You hope that you can get those stops, bend don't break, like you said. If we had to give, I know we did game balls, but I think the best unit for this defense to me was the defensive tackle spot. I thought they were fantastic. Mason Smith, Jordan Jefferson, obviously. I think you can even sprinkle in the defensive ends like Paris Shand and Savion Jones. I thought they had a really good game. And after those touchdown drives, they kind of just clamped down.
Yeah, with our game balls, we both cashed it on the Jaden Daniels on offense for a prediction. I went Toviano on defense. You went Mason Smith. I don't know stat-wise, maybe Harold Perkins had the most productive game of anyone because he had some sacks and tackles for loss. I don't know exactly what he finished at. 3 solo tackles. 1.5 tackles for loss, 6 tackles. Some D linemen had some good numbers, like you said. Mason Smith was in on a sack. I'd have to look down.
Did you
Jacobian
see that?
Guillory and
Did you see the Jordan Jefferson clip I tweeted out?
yes, that was a great play. You almost went with him, so I don't know. On a night like that, I mean, you could maybe make a case to give it to a few different guys.
Hey man,
Ashton Stamps,
Quincy Wiggins came in and made 2 plays in the backfield or big
he
plays that I was like,
did
"Oh, okay,
for
Quincy.
everyone that's been wondering what he's been up to,
Hey, he's still there. He's still
and
there."
got himself a tackle for loss. And
Yes.
then, let's see, specialty. Oh well, we'll say Ashton Stamps got a lot of run. Started in this game, got picked on early, gave up an early score, but then bounced back really well. He ultimately had 8 tackles, all of them solo, and then had a pass breakup. And Brian Kelly said he thought he played a lot better as the game went on after he settled in. And we on special teams failed. We did not ever name this player that I think was the MVP once all year. Well, Damian Ramos never had a field goal, and Bramblett never punted, so they're out. Caleb Jackson, I don't believe, returned a kick, so
I don't
he's
think
out.
so.
Greg Clayton didn't return a punt, he's out. But LSU entered this game. Greg Clayton had only returned 2 punts. This is not a made up
Crazy.
stat. 2 punts in 10 games. Greg Clayton has fielded 2. Aaron Anderson, they've only fielded 3 total. Aaron Anderson fielded the other and he fumbled it. So 2 total all year they've returned. In this game, the up back, walk on Jayden Daniels, took 2 short hop punts, one for the longest return of anyone on the season, almost 30 yards. The other one, I think he was feeling himself, was like, all right, let's do this, and immediately got popped hard on the play, but held on to it. So I guess special teams wise, Jayden Daniels gets it, the up back.
Yeah, great scouting from the special teams department to know that Georgia State's punter, I guess, does these short, weird punts that only go like 30 yards, and I guess they hope it rolls or something, but they just scouted it and put Nichols up there, and it just was awful for Georgia State. But yeah, there you go. The corners, freshman corners are gonna learn good and bad. Laterrence Welch gave up a deep ball. Toviano gave up a ball. I mean, they all had their moments of struggle, but that's why you put them in the game here. If they're going to do anything next year, you have to give them in-game experience to where they are getting beat, where they have film to look back on. You can go through the good and the bad. It's just how it is. The answers are not coming this year. Obviously, this is game 11. So now it's about finding answers for next year, finding who's going to be in the room next year, who you want in the room next year, and hopefully coaching that up. That's going to be the biggest thing for me. So I thought Sage actually played a really good game. They didn't throw at him a ton, but Sage looked in phase in all of the reps that he got. So shout out to
Yep.
him as well.
When they don't call your name a lot as a corner, that's a great thing
He almost
usually.
had a pick, I think.
He did.
The
He did.
return.
Real quick before we get out of here, Jayden Daniels, we've talked about a ton to start this pod about. He's number 1 in every statistical category out there, basically, as a quarterback. Unbelievable season. 1 game left against Texas A&M. But his receivers made a little history last night, Matty B. Neighbors, 8 catches for 140 and 2. Brian Thomas, 4 catches for 103 and 1. And Kyron Lacey, 5 catches for 101 and 2 touchdowns. They become the first trio of receivers in LSU history ever to all go over 100 yards in a game, which is impressive considering that Jefferson, Chase, and Terrace Marshall were catching balls from Burrow not very long ago. So shout out to those guys. And your weekly update has not changed. Malik Neighbors, 1424, 1,424 receiving yards. That's the most by anybody in college football. And 14 touchdown catches by Brian Thomas, the most by anybody in college football. They entered the week with the lead, and they only added on to it.
So I have a dynasty football league, and I currently have Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and I'm trying to wiggle my way up in the draft to where I can get Malik and
You
Brian
want part
Thomas.
2?
I want all 4 of them on my dynasty football team. I have Joe as my quarterback too, which isn't great because he's hurt right now, but that's okay. Anyways, I say all that. Those 2 are fantastic. Honestly, I thought Kyron Lacey had the best game of his
He
LSU
did.
career. That route he had to get okay, so I'm watching on the TV, right? And I'm like, all right, Malik's in the slot on the right side. I was like, oh, he beat him. He beat the safety, I think, on the in route. But Daniels never looked his way. He looked at Lacey and saw the amount of separation he got on that on that. I think it was like a stutter and then like an outbreak and then broke in and got like 5 yards of separation and just threw it to him wide open. And I'm obviously on TV on first watch. I'm like, how did he get so open? They go back and show it, and it is a beautiful route. Kyron Lacy, I think the drops are legitimate. Like you can legitimately get on him for drops, yes. But there are very few number 3 receivers in the country that are better than Kyron Lacy. Like
No.
flat out.
And people didn't want him on the field last year. He's made way big strides for that. Let me put you into perspective here. In the SEC, 14 touchdowns. Brian Thomas obviously leads. That leads the nation. Malik Neighbors has 12. Luther Burden, who's an animal, has 8. And so does Trey Harris and Will Shepard, 2 Louisiana natives right there at Ole Miss and Vandy. Xavier Leggett, who has been on fire for South Carolina, has 7. Then there's a group at 6. And your boy, Kyron Lacy, is in that group, which makes him one of the top 10 receivers this year in the SEC. LSU's got the number 1 and 2 stat-wise, and there goes Kyron making his way into the top 10.
Like, I mean, yeah, that route was awesome, but in general, we know what he can do with the ball in his hands. The problem for him was obviously getting the ball in his hands and making sure he caught the ball. But once he catches the ball, like this is a dude that has yards after catch ability that is exceptional. And so I'm buying Kyron Lacy stock right now going into next year. Potential wide receiver 1 there. We'll see what happens and whether freshman or portal, whatever else. But Kyron Lacy, that dude had a great game. So shout out to him.
All right. Anything else?
No, Caleb Jackson ran over some people. Trey
Yep.
Holly got some carries. Josh
He did.
Williams.
Trey Holly looked good.
Noah Kane went down at the 3. Shout out to him to let Jaden Daniels go in and score. But
well, no, and Mac Markway caught his first touchdown pass there.
Markway touchdown pass, so good for him.
The young bucks out there shining. True freshman.
Nuss Bus was just handing the ball off.
But, can't after you've kept Jaden into the 4th, you can't go out there and continue to throw. So yes,
just keep it going.
Gotta hand it off.
But yeah, that's it.
And 1 week left, Matty B. 1 week left.
Man,
it flies by.
1 week left. Big game against A&M. I will repeat that. LSU versus A&M. That is a big game for the program, for Jayden Daniels, for everybody here. So I expect a full Tiger Stadium, 11 a.m. kickoff. We'll cover that throughout the week. And yeah, thank you all for joining us. Give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Thank you all for your support. Subscribe to the Bengal Tiger On3. You get all of the content, all of the board posts, all of our engagement there as well. So we'll be back with the Monday mailbag. Again, we'll post that around lunchtime tomorrow. But until then, we'll talk to y'all later.